People who've gotten their bosses fired. How? Phoned him to tell him I wouldn't be at work for the rest of the week as my mom is terminally ill in the hospital. The next day, about an hour after she passed away, he phoned and asked why I wasn't at work. I just hung up on him so I wouldn't say anything that would get me in trouble. The next day, I sent the area manager a WhatsApp message explaining what he'd done and attached a video of him breaking the freezer door while having a tantrum, which cost the store nearly £5,000 in lost stock and the repair costs, which he told the AM it broke on its own. He got fired that day and I got 2 weeks off with full pay. Story 2. I left my last company due to an oppressor of a GM. Many people were leaving over him causing problems. Everyone informed HR during their exit interviews. Heck, he even tried to make my exit interview not happen. Though they still weren't doing anything. I'd been at my new job for a couple of months now and was still getting complaints from my old team almost daily. So I made an email account and named concerned company name crew, sent an email to everyone who had an email account within the company explaining what he did, still did, with events spanning from his start to the day prior. They fired him within the week and my old crew thanked me. Story 3. One summer I volunteered to help a conservation society in East Africa. The aim of the project was to educate the local rural population about poaching and to get them to help us stop it from the ground up. Anyway, I was staying with the lead ranger and his family, and on numerous occasions he served us meat that I'm 100% sure was poached. He tried to tell me that it was pork, but it was dark and gamey with lots of small bones. I think that it was a small antelope, like a duker. When I returned to Nairobi, I mentioned to my grandpa, his boss's boss, that we'd eaten some odd meals. He investigated and found out that my boss had a poacher friend who was selling him illegal meat. He was fired. I didn't feel guilty. Poaching is awful. Story 4. Not my direct boss, but the new VP of our department. Everyone hated him and the poorly thought through changes he was threatening to implement. A lot of my coworkers were talking about looking for other jobs. Our manager at the time, my direct boss, was really inexperienced and had no idea how to handle the situation. I was only a year out of college and didn't know what to do, but I was openly gay, as was the VP of a different department. We were the only 2 openly gay people at the company at the time, so we chatted a bit. I went to his office and said, I don't know if you have any influence on my department, but we're going to lose half of our team if someone doesn't do something about this guy, and I didn't know who else to come to. He asked me to have anyone else in the department who felt the same way come talk to him. I spread the word, and there were plenty of takers. A few days later, we all saw my department's VP have a private meeting with the CEO. After that meeting, he announced that he wasn't going to make the changes he'd been talking about. He then proceeded to do absolutely nothing for the next month because it turned out that if he couldn't lead the department in a top-down authoritarian style, he genuinely didn't know what else to do. He was fired at the end of that month. Apparently, the gay agenda is improving working conditions for everyone. You're welcome. Story 5. He was such a liar. All talk, he yells at me one day for failing to do some task, which got done anyway because someone got a hold of my boss. They only needed a mailing address I forgot to give them. Meanwhile, he's over at his buddy's house looking at his new boat. Made me mad, so I called his boss and told him all the work that gets done out of this office is me. It was a long talk with him, but the big boss said he was feeling that was what was going on. This obviously wasn't the first time my boss was slacking off, but him giving me crap when he wasn't even in the office was the camel back straw. Boss didn't get fired, but left shortly after. Was an awkward couple of weeks. Big boss ended up writing me a nice recommendation letter when I changed positions. Yeah, that awkward couple of weeks must have felt like a very tense office boat tour, except everyone knew whose ship was sinking. Story 6. Not me, but my GF at the time. We were both working at a small burrito chain. She was front of house manager and I was kitchen manager. Above us was one senior manager and then the owner. We did tip pooling based on hours, and the senior manager always told my GF not to count the tips every night as he divided it up at the end of the week. Well, of course, she counted them every night. Turns out the senior manager was stealing almost $500 a week from employees in tips, and because his previous FOH manager never questioned him, had likely been going on for years. She told the owners and he was gone the next day. A week later, his wife left him. Story 7. I worked in a call center once with a female supervisor. She was a particularly crappy person. Long story short, she hated me because I would refuse to date her. She asked multiple times, and multiple times I explained very nicely that I was not interested but would like to remain friends. After about the 3rd time, she started giving me negative remarks for reviews, phone calls, and the like. One day, she pulled me into the office with another manager and proceeded to write me up for talking on my personal phone during work hours. Mind you, I had not done this. I looked at her and refused to do this. I walked out of her office and into the department manager's office. This was my first complaint after about 3 years with this company. I explained the situation and advised what has been transpiring for months now. Apparently, someone else had seen this about a month ago and had already gone to management about what she was doing to me. Within 10 minutes, she was pulled into the office and demoted back down to my position, but in another department. The thing that sucked is that this department is directly across from me. Story 8. He was presenting a PowerPoint that I had put together to all the managers in the building. There was something he wanted to add at the last minute that he had never told me about. And when it wasn't there, he screamed at me for like 5 minutes straight, yelling, name-calling, telling me to prove to him that I had a college degree and wasn't just making it up. I was a contractor, so I was afraid to complain to HR because I assumed they'd just fire me. But a lot of other people in the room did. After the meeting, I went into the shared drive folder to find the presentation notes where the extra information was supposedly located. I watched the last time change from a day ago to the current time. Then he immediately called and said it was right there in the notes file. He was fired the next day for unprofessional behavior. Story 9. He'd show up every day and tell us a tale of his exploits, whether true or not. None of us wanted to hear it. If an attractive-looking female comes in, he drops what he's doing and stares at her, drooling like a dog in a dog treat factory. After she leaves, he had to say a comment about her appearance. After talking on the phone with a certain manager, he always comments on how nice she looks. He'd pester us employees and other managers, called us witches a lot despite us getting onto him for it. My female coworker reported him. We all had a phone meeting with our district manager and HR. He was suspended until the investigation was over, and they ruled to terminate him. Surprisingly, HR worked for us that day. Story 10. So my boss has not gotten fired yet, but I have a good feeling that if I quit, it will be the first domino towards that. I joined my company a year ago as an AR rep, accounts receivable representative. I make sure we get paid for the work we did for our clients. I was the only person on my team. Supervisor was great, let me do my thing, and we actually saw results for what I was doing. Average days for money to be received went from 90 to 55 with just me. A few months ago, a new CFO came in and completely changed the process and is, quote, my way or the highway type of guy. Consistently puts more things on our plate than necessary, has unrealistic expectations, and is extremely forgetful. Continuously makes empty promises, promised me a raise, didn't put it in, etc., and expects people to just listen to him at all costs. AR is the biggest problem in our company, and it isn't getting much better due to horrible clients and the fact that our team is only 2 people. We have over 800 clients, by the way. However, according to him, this is all our responsibility, which I am taking as, quote, I'm going to save my bum if this boils over and blame you guys. I had 3 final interviews last week, and I'm hoping to hear back from them this week. I will be putting my notice in, and with the amounts of complaining my coworker and I do to each other about him, she will put in her notice shortly after. Single-handedly losing his entire AR team due to his management style will most likely lead to him being let go. Now, just to be clear, I don't hate my boss as a person. In fact, as a professional, he is very precise in what he does, and he's an easy, fun guy, and has given me a lot of advice in terms of my professional growth. However, his management style, forgetfulness, and treatment of workers is what will ultimately lead to his downfall. Story 11. This wasn't me, but I worked in a kitchen that was run very poorly. The owners owned 20 or so restaurants in the region, and after a solid year of awful management and little profit, they finally decided to audit the damn place. All of the assistant managers had private sit-downs with the owners, and most had little to say, just that they were often busy and hard to succeed with such high turnover. Then it was Kimmy, the witch's turn. She was an assistant who had worked at the restaurant for longer than anybody else. She went way back with the owners. She completely sold out our GM and all of his wrongdoings. Our GM was promptly fired, and Kimmy was called back into a private meeting with the owners and was also fired, since she knew all of these things were happening and failed to notify the owners. What a day that was. Story 12. After our favorite supervisor finally retired, we got a new guy in for 6 months to take over our department. One morning, I was on break eating a sandwich I had bought from the deli. An assistant manager came up and was talking, and I had mentioned I was eating more from the deli and that my manager had recommended some of the better sandwiches. As it turned out, what seemed like a very casual conversation turned into a loss prevention investigation, resulting in management discovering my manager was stealing his lunches from the deli. A couple years later, when I moved up to full-time to pay off school debt, another FT manager basically revealed I had gotten the ball rolling. Years later, the reveal probably felt like the dramatic conclusion of a workplace true crime documentary, with him as the unsuspecting catalyst. Story 13. HVAC tech brought a new person on as a scheduler. This person got a power trip almost instantly. I outperformed everyone in the company, and this colleague kept harping about something. Like every time I called the office, he'd say something crappy. Last call of the day comes to me, and I'm angry. I've worked 10 hours, no breaks, just go, go, go. So he starts in again while giving me a job that should have gone to someone else. I got angry after getting the info and hung up on him. He starts texting me. I called his boss, one of my good friends, and laid it out. Him or me? Something has to change. Either I never have to talk to him, which is possible, or I'll bring in my truck. I got a text from the to be at the shop early. I get there early so I can watch him clean out his desk. Found out later he had been fired from the last 4 jobs for basically the same thing. HVAC technicians can be your best friends if you treat them right, but we don't take crap for nothing. And if you're learning a thing or two from this video, enjoying all the stories so far, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 14. Not me specifically, but my entire job. We had a woman become our boss in a very short period of time because she found ways to save the company money by screwing over the manpower. From letting people go that she didn't like, buying cheap tools that made our jobs harder, getting rid of work vehicles and not replacing them, letting people go to hire new ones at a cheaper rate, and even only giving Christmas bonuses to people she liked. With us only being able to contact the corporate to complain and them choosing her words over ours, we did the only thing possible. We started to meet with the local union and organize. When the corporate finally found out, she told them it was only a handful of lazy guys and it was nothing to worry about. We won the vote 52 to 6-ish. I can't remember exactly. Now she is demoted and training people in her old position where she belongs. She was really good at training people. Lesson, treat the manpower nice because without them, the job doesn't get done. Story 15. He was the new assistant manager at our Denny's, and he was an absolute crap stain of a human being. He would oppress anyone he could at any opportunity and often played up his Freemasonry as if it made him some kind of elder god who knew all and saw all. He was a 47-year-old man secretly dating a waitress and lied about serving in the military. His mom came in to eat and debunked him by accident. So this Freemason, stolen valor schmuck tried to flex on me one night. It's a long story, so I'll tell you the short version. I had somewhere to be after my shift, and it was really important to me. I made sure all of my work was done so I could clock out at 11 p.m. sharp. As soon as the clock turned, I punched my numbers in and made for the door. He stopped me, and the conversation went like this. Hey, GM, where do you think you're going? He sounds like Bob Parr's boss from The Incredibles. Me? Going home. Night. Hey, GM, I don't think so. You're not done here. Me? My checklist is on the counter. I checked it twice. Peace. AGM. Oh yeah? Well, what about this? Opens the pie case. AGM. It's filthy. Me? That was Tracy's side work. She's off for the next 2 days. You'll have to ask her about Monday. I'll see you later. AGM. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. You can clean it tonight, then you can clean out the freezer, and after that, you can clean the grease traps for the cook. How do you like that? Me? You're joking. AGM. I'm not. Get back here. I flicked my name tag off and threw him the bird before walking out. AGM. Don't do this. Get back in here. The next day would have been Saturday night, and it was just me and my best friend working with no backup. I didn't feel good about leaving him like that, so the next day I called the GM. Me. Hey, I'm sure you heard about what happened. I don't want to leave. Friend, high and dry by himself tonight. So if you'll just let me work tonight's shift. GM. Look, don't worry about it. Just come in. So I went in to find out that the AGM had been let go. Turns out the GM was tired of him too, and I've been working there for 4 years at that point, and I was one of the most dependable servers. I laughed like a maniac and worked there 2 more years while I finished college. Story 16. I haven't got my boss fired, but our team had her transferred out thanks to support from our union. She was a very cruel person, and we jointly pursued a complaint. Went through a full investigation process. It was hard and emotional, but it was worth it in the end. I have, however, gotten my ex-partner's boss fired. My ex doesn't even know I did this. He was a complete crap at his job and very racist, too. This isn't a restaurant. Multiple complaints from staff about him. Finally, after seeing the toll on my partner, I got fed up and wrote a complaint email as a customer saying they had heard him saying the N-word a bunch. He was finally let go. Thing is, I didn't make up this story. He really did do this to a black staff member who had complained already, but the pressure of an outsider finally worked. Story 17. Worked at a McDonald's in high school. I was being pestered by a coworker twice my age. He said some really awful stuff to me that made me afraid to come to work. They refused to switch my shifts. They also were working me too much for being under 18 and tried to get me to sign a consent form saying I knew I'd be working the hours I was when I constantly asked for different hours. I called the corporate offices and told them. My parents even got a lawyer involved. I quit, and a few weeks later, a coworker I went to school with said two of the shift managers, the supervisor, and the store manager were all terminated and barred from working with the company again. They brought in a few temporary people who were high up and ended up sniffing out the other bad employees. Story 18. Oh boy, my time to shine. I used to work for an industrial supply company, and my boss was undiagnosed but admittedly bipolar. He was extremely mean. He used to threaten us, would call our spouses and yell at them about our performance, scream at us in front of customers, the list goes on. He once told me that if my 5-year plan wasn't helping get him promoted, then I had no place in the company. He openly questioned me as a person, my relationship, and my personal morals since I didn't want to sell faulty equipment. I would have mini panic attacks before work, and after 3 years, I decided that enough was enough. From the very first occurrence, I began documenting everything. When he smashed a candy machine, I took photos. Brought and kept his gun at work, I took photos. Screamed at a coworker's spouse, I called and got signed copies of the transcription. I basically documented everything so that no one could tell me this wasn't happening, and had substantial proof of this hostile work environment. One day, I called our district manager out to lunch. I put the several-inch thick manila folder in front of him and informed him that either he was fired and replaced, our boss, or everyone was walking out. Given the evidence and after speaking with the other employees, our boss, 10 years in the company, was fired. I have never been more satisfied and proud of myself in my life. Story 19. I used to work at a Target. Back then, I had a racist boss named Leroy, a black male, and I'm a white male. Well, I worked in electronics and always did my best to keep things in order while making sure to customer service anyone possible that needed my help. I did things my own way in more efficient ways than the way he taught me. But because of that, he would always get mad at me and tell me I'm not doing a good job. When I was hired, they told me I would be strictly working in toys and electronics, but they made me do women's clothes, seasonal, and sporting goods sections too at the same time as electronics and toys. Needless to say, I was always busy, and those lacking departments would sometimes be a mess at the end of the night. Only so much I can humanly do. Well, he got into my face one day in the middle of the day, looked me in the eyes, and said, "You're a slacking loser and you should quit." I raised my voice and said, "Back off, dude. I'm doing my job and doing much more than you. You literally walk around doing nothing." His face had a weird shape and he pushed me. I threw my electronics keys after he did that and said, "Go screw yourself," so loud everyone in the area stopped to look. As I walked away, he chased me, apologizing, and that he did not mean to get mad and push me. I went to see the store manager who just sits behind her desk, no better herself. I told her I'm quitting and told her to watch the camera to see that this schmuck pushed me, got in my face, and literally paraded around sprouting orders but doing nothing himself. A week later, I went to the electronics store to buy a controller for my Nintendo Switch. I talked to the cashier I knew there. She said Leroy was fired around when I left. Feels good, man. Now I'm getting paid much more at an IT job that I'm much more respected at. Seriously, do not let people pester you, especially when you're doing a lot more than you should be. Story 20. I worked at a sports stadium in the UK as a kitchen porter. First month there, the head chef offered to sell a few of us grass and said to pay him when we got paid. Payday came and there was a fault with the payment system, so we told him this. He got really mad about it up to the point of getting physical with one of the porters. He says he wants his money the next day, regardless of if we've been paid or not. Next day comes and we've thankfully been paid. Sitting in the break area, waiting to start work, and we see him and his whole chef team being led past the windows in handcuffs to waiting police vans. Turns out one of the managers of the place had overheard him shouting for his money the day before and had contacted police who set up a sting for the next day. He and his team, 5 or 6 other guys, were all dealing and got fired and replaced. The manager wasn't sure who he was shouting at and therefore didn't know who had bought the grass, so we all got off scot-free. Story 21. Me and a friend both worked at a small neighborhood liquor store. The store was always short-staffed. The manager would call me or my buddy and demand we come in for a shift on days we weren't scheduled. This happened very often. My buddy got diagnosed with leukemia and had to quit. Less than a week later, they forgot to pay me. When the manager called me into work, a shift I wasn't scheduled for, I said I would only come in if they paid me what I was owed. The manager said I was being quote-unquote difficult and immature and fired me over the phone. The owner got so mad at the manager for firing one of their only employees, he fired her. In the span of a week, they lost over half of their workforce. I went into the store the next week to pick up my final paychecks. The owner, who was forced to work behind the till at this point, offered me my job back with a 25-cent per hour raise. I said no. Story 22. I got promoted to sous chef by my head chef in this restaurant I worked at. I worked my bum off, learning everything I needed to become the best sous I could. Flash forward a few months later, my chef walks out, quits on the spot. Normally, the sous should take over, which I did. I worked overtime, came in at weird hours, did everything, and then some by myself for a month. Restaurant owner tells me he hired another chef over hiring me as a full-time chef, some guy from a different state. So this guy comes in and tries changing everything and starts ruining the restaurant. I was beyond angry in general, so I stopped caring much. I decided to look this chef up because he kept telling stories about how cool he was. I look him up and find nothing. Then I remembered a coworker he hired called him by a different last name, so I looked that up. Bingo. Dude turns out that he's on the run for missing probation and not registering as a criminal. He has charges and wasn't allowed to be near anyone. Anyway, I told the owner this. He got called out for it, then got fired. After the meeting between him and the owners, I put my notice in. Screw that. Story 23. Not my boss, but I got a hiring manager fired. She originally hired me to be a teller and intern when I was a sophomore in college. Graduated with my bachelor's and thought I wouldn't mind staying there. Her boss tells me to apply for a different ops position just to get my foot in the door at the professional level. I put in 3 apps. Hiring manager calls me and tells me they would consider taking me back as a teller. I told her to politely kick rocks. Her boss called me a few months later when I started a job as an analyst at a national bank. Asks me why it didn't work. I told her to ask the hiring manager why she only wanted me back as a teller. 2 days later, she's walked out by security with her cardboard box. Apparently, I wasn't the only person she tried to schmuck around with. She also gave preferred treatment and hired her friends as kids who were still in college over experienced professionals on a couple of occasions. Only found out because I still FaceTime my old coworkers from time to time. Story 24. Love this question. Worked for a large IT company in a system support role. We had a great team, the best group of people I ever worked with. I was the lead on the team and we got a great manager. To a man, the entire team would do anything for this guy. I'd cross the I-95 on my hands and knees if he asked me to. I went on vacation and came back to find that our manager had been moved to a new team and we now had a new manager. New manager instantly split the team in 2, appointed 2 new managers, and brought in a new lead. They also brought in a new way for the team to accept work from our customers. Despite my pleading that they were missing key areas and that things were destined to fail, they wouldn't listen. They even tried to promote me to a more senior position on the team, i.e. make their crappy plan work, and I was offered a 0% raise. I told them to stuff it. I then called a meeting with all the folks on my team and told them that going forward, I expected them to follow the new work rules to the frickin' letter. I didn't care what was missing, what was going to happen. We were to do as we were told, no questions asked. Took about 2 months before the crap hit the fan, failed changes, security patches missing, customers raising hell. I was asked to attend a meeting with one of the directors shortly after I accepted another position in the company. I was asked what was going on and I laid it all out in all its details. New manager was gone a month later. Story 25. Data that proved he was deliberately undermining the head of the organization in an effort to get him replaced. His boss and the person who had hired him was attempting to overthrow the head of the organization. My boss wanted to fire us and hire people aligned with his goals, so he was literally giving us nothing to do and then telling the head that we were incapable of doing anything. There was also an element of religious intolerance. I could see the writing on the wall, so even though I was promoted into my boss's old job, I knew that eventually the head would be replaced. I was right. A few years after he was replaced, the entire organization collapsed as a result of mass incompetence. I believe what happened to me was very unusual, and it only occurred because it was a situation where we live by producing objective, hard to argue with data. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.